Happy Monday, everybody. Today is May 11th, 2020. Welcome to the Polymath Project. Today, I'm very happy to welcome to the show Junod Etienne. He is a certified hypnotherapist and also a senior member of the Institute for Hermetic Philosophy in New York. A couple of weeks back, Junod wrote what some may call a controversial article on the coronavirus and prompted us to think things through with an independent, objective lens. There's been a lot of folks, doctors on the front lines, as well as scientists, researchers, people from all walks of life putting together alternative theories and ideas about coronavirus and how we're handling things. And when Junod put out his article for family and friends, it spread, and thousands of people across the web have now viewed it. And of course, with that, all kinds of reactions. So I'm excited to have Junod on to talk about the article, what prompted him to write it, and share with us his point of view. Junod Etienne, welcome to the Polymath Project. How are you doing, my friend?
Thank you. I'm doing great. It's great to be here.
Awesome. It's great to have you. Today's May 11th, 2020. We're now, Junod, 2 months into this quarantine here, at least in the tri-state area where I know you reside as well. How are you doing amidst this, A? And B, I know you wrote this blog article a couple of weeks back, and I want to know, I know you wrote it for family and friends mostly, but it's now spread quite dramatically. Thousands of people have been looking at it. I want to know, A, how you're doing, yourself and your family, and then talk about your inspiration for putting this article together.
Well, yeah, thanks for asking. We're doing great, actually. We're doing really well. We had a bit of a rough road trying to figure out this new place where we were, kids home from school. Our business, you know, we have a family business and an acupuncture center, a health center. It had been, you can imagine, like thrown for a loop. But as time went on, as the weeks went on, we sort of figured out how to make it all work, figured out how to smooth out the tensions, you know, inside the house, as well as getting comfortable with this different world we're living in, right? So yeah, we're doing really well with it, and we found a different way of relating to the world out there and slowing down our own clocks, spending a lot of really good family time, and learning. More than anything, both of us, my wife and I, and even the kids, are learning so much from this.
How old are your kids?
They're 3. Aman is 3 and Jahan is 8.
And they're both in school?
They're both, yeah, well, Aman he's in daycare, amazing daycare called Peace Through Play, and Jahan goes to, she's in the 2nd grade at a Waldorf school, Green Meadow. So they're just 2 amazingly energetic kids, and that has its pros and cons, you can imagine.
Hopefully you guys have some outdoor space that you can get some sunlight, especially as the weather's getting nicer here.
That's the good thing. We live out in Rockland County, and there's a farm very close. There's plenty of space to like walk and hike and experience nature. So, you know, we're really lucky that we have this type of environment to enjoy as we're locked down. We're really not locked down. We're really kind of like just, you know, out and enjoying most of the time. So. And
most of those places aren't closed off or limited in various ways to the public?
No. We have plenty of, there are places that are closed down, but this area, we just sort of live we're right in the middle of it. There's a farm right next door, and my daughter every Wednesday goes and milks the cows and helps with the farm, and everyone is very welcoming, and there's a good sense of community here, which is really, really important.
That's wonderful, Junod. That's wonderful to hear. And not everyone's so fortunate as that, but you guys put yourself in a good position by being close to nature. Speak towards this article you wrote titled Coronavirus, Let's Think This Through. I'm gonna, as you speak, I'll pull it up so the audience could see the URL, and it's certainly a well-researched piece. But talk about your inspiration for it, and give the audience a summary, if you can, of the main message points that you wanted to get across.
So, as I mentioned, we run an acupuncture center. It's Dachi Acupuncture, and we're in Houston, Manhattan, on Houston Street in Manhattan. We noticed that a lot of people, once we sort of got into the COVID time and area, they were afraid to leave their houses, and they didn't want to do anything, and it was locked down, shut down. However, one of the things that we know, that we've been, Lita's been practicing this for years. She's been doing this, and she's a women's health guru, and she's an amazing acupuncturist. She knows that the immune system is the #1 answer to this thing. In other words, we know that the people who do the worst on this are people with weakened immune systems and the elderly. And on the flip side of that, that if you have a strong immune system, you can, get infected and contract this thing and not even notice it, not have very little to no symptoms at all. So one of the things that keeps your immune system powerful is, let's say, acupuncture, right? So people were afraid to come in and get acupuncture. People were afraid to, make any types of moves. And for us, that's kind of backwards, despite what we hear from, the media and the people who are making all of the decisions, which we might agree with or not agree with. It's really important to keep up a very strong immune system. And so one of the reasons why I wrote the piece was to illustrate and get people to understand that one, it's important not to have a lot of, to work with the fear. And for some reason, the media, that's the one thing they upplay, the fear. Reporting on the numbers of deaths every single day, casting it in a light where the solutions are not pointed out, but it's just, the worst part every single day. After a while, everybody's so afraid. So I decided to write this piece and do all of the research for it and share it with family and friends. And it was supposed to be a couple of dozen people at the beginning, and it turned out to be over, close to 1,500 people now who've read this and who are digesting it. And a lot of the response that we've gotten, people are saying things like, well, we've gotten some negative response, but overwhelmingly people are like, oh, I'm so glad I read that. I feel so much better about leaving my house. And so that's exactly the kind of response we were looking for, as well as just really detailed. I feel like it's important to think independently. It's really important to check sources, think independently, look at what's happening in between the lines and behind the scenes, and get your news sources, in a place where it's not the common feeding trough. Go to get the news that you find through your efforts, not just the one that happens to arrive at your doorstep.
It's hard to do that, isn't it? It's hard to find those independent sources and maintain or obtain some type of objectivity. We like to believe we can trust our elected officials and what's on CNN. And so how do we, it's almost like I don't know if you want to call it a hypnosis or not, but it's how do we maintain or get to that state of objectivity?
So just by kind of knowing the game, you said the word trust. So trust is the most important factor here. And to be honest, the news, the media has shown time and time again that a lot of the ways that they position stories, the facts that they include, how they spin it, they are serving their corporate benefactors more than the people that they serve. So and we hear it all the time that 90% of the news is owned by, or more than 90% is owned by 6 major corporations. That there's like a uniformity of messaging, that they keep us away from the most important viewpoints. So while they debate certain things on one side, on another side, we're totally missing really essential reporting. So it's important to know that and look for things that don't fall in that category. And a lot of those can be found on the internet. I love to listen to Del Bigtree, the High Wire. There's many independent sources that are independently funded, very important again, that will give it to you in a completely different way. And I don't say go out and listen to those things and just absorb them. No, you got to think critically, take them, measure them, because as you were saying, hypnosis is, I define hypnosis because that's what I do. I'm a hypnotist. I'm a certified professional hypnotist by trade. I define hypnosis as successful communication with the subconscious mind. And when I do it in a clinical setting, I help people to resolve real problems that they have, like anxiety, fear, weight loss, smoking, phobias, that kind of thing. I help them to improve their lives. But you can also use the same force, right? The same set of principles to manipulate people and cause them to communicate with their subconscious in a way that produces fear, right? Or in a way that produces compliance, right? And I find the news doing that more often than they never do it the other way, right? So the main point of the article was to flatten the fear, to get people the facts that can help them think through this thing independently, so that they're not just responding and reacting to the fear. Really simple things like the corona numbers, those numbers are off. They're way off because of the way that they're being reported. And you can read more about it in the article, that they're reported in a way that, well, I guess from the time I wrote the article till now, it's a lot more common knowledge that a COVID death isn't a COVID death, right? That
sure,
if you classify death as COVID, it never had to be tested. That's a pretty big deal. It might not sound big at first, but it's a huge deal. You could inflate the numbers, you could double, triple those numbers, right? Yeah,
not to mention that tests are being proven not to necessarily be working in a lot of cases, false positives and things of that nature. So sure, so the data is being exaggerated in a way that ties into what you mentioned earlier. This fear factor, and the way people are responding, individually and collectively. I guess it's up to each one of us, but it seems like there's some different waves of response, and but also some frustrations, which is probably why you're getting different types of reactions to putting out information like this.
Yes. Yes, there's
Yeah.
a whole lot of frustration out there. There's a whole lot of, um, you know, pointing fingers, name calling, and a lot of people are doing the research, and then they find all of these kind of, you know, let's call them like conspiratorial kind of currents and flows, which, I'm I'm not going to deny. I think conspiracy theory is a term that's kind of invented in order to get people to stop thinking. I want them to start thinking, but I'm not going to embrace that term either. I think that the important thing, I I find that sometimes when people do that type of thinking, they get to the negative kind of mistrustful, negative. The sky is falling, which is not untrue. There are bad people out there. There are things that are happening that we don't know about. But the way I feel about it is, and that's the way that I learned from the Institute for Hermetic Philosophy, which you and I both have been there. We're brothers from there. It's so important to be fanatically positive.
Hmm.
It's important to vibrate in a way that stimulates the highest that you have to offer. And if there are negative people, if there's some, let's say, negative agenda that's happening out there,
Yeah.
then that negative part of that negative agenda would be to keep you in fear, or to keep you in frustration, despondency, conflict, right? But if you rise above that, then what do? You take your power back. You are, you know, um, you are winning. You're victorious against all of their attempts. And so, if they exist, right?
Yeah.
So it's the best thing for you. It's the best thing for your freedom. It's the best thing for the society, and the most important thing that we can remember about society is that, Dario Salas Summer, the head of the Institute for Hermetic Philosophy, said it all the time. He said, "There's only one problem. It looks like there's all of these different problems, but there's only one problem in the world." And today, in the age of coronavirus, that becomes even more obvious. And he says that problem is the low level of consciousness of people.
Hmm.
And so, if that's the real problem, then we need to raise our consciousness level. And raising our consciousness level includes, yes, being very positive, understanding that that's the answer, and it's not running away from the problem. Knowing in detail what's happening, yes, but working on ourselves to make sure that our energy is good, right? And that we don't get weighed down, and that this doesn't muddy us, right? Um, Vibrating with love, with strength, with harmony, learning all those facts, and then still being able to vibrate in this way, that makes us really powerful. And then it makes us what I like to call not a match for any kind of, what people complain about and fear about, like uh, tyranny or injustice, or we're not a match for that.
Right. Right.
So
So it's an interesting. I don't know if the word's a paradox, but it's an interesting situation. Then, I mean, one of the points in your article talks about the loss of our freedom with what's happening now, and has some challenges in that regard. And what you're saying now is that regardless of the external scenario that's happening politically or socially, we have a certain power in our hands where we can face that situation, and we don't really have to lose that freedom internally.
yeah, exactly. That's where the freedom starts. Because let's say um, there's, I guess there's a difference, right, between um, revolution and evolution. And revolution is somebody does me wrong, and then I get them back, I put them down, and then I take their place, and that's revolution. Evolution is understanding on a deeper level what's happening, seeing humanity everywhere I go, and knowing that we need a different platform. We need to create a different type of world, a different type of society. And if you look at the framers of the Constitution, they had a higher vision in mind. Their vision left a lot on the table as far as power. They wanted to divide that power up in any way, the separation of church and state, the checks and balances. That was they wanted to find a different way than just, have somebody else who they like have power, right? They wanted to spread it out. And we've kind of lost that guiding vision of doing that. But what we're losing by not having that guiding vision is the clear vision of the higher society that we want to leave here for our kids. And that has to include this internal positivity, connecting to the highest thing that we have inside. Yet on the other side of that, right, being really clear on what's going on. So while we're vibrating with love and strength and honor and all these beautiful things, at the same time we have our eyes on, wait a second, this is not correct. This is not reported correctly, or this policy is not executed correctly. This is corrupt, then this corruption is no good. So we have to be not just pie in the sky. We have to have our feet firmly rooted on the ground and clear and awake and alive. And then, sometimes when I see a client and they have a whole bunch of terrible stuff that's happening in their lives, it's clear that stuff is not just on the outside, that there's some internal condition that they have that's making those things happen, right? Whether or not it's a lost job or some kind of marital situation. So the inside corresponds to the outside, right? As above, so below. And the same thing happens with our society. If we had been vibrating on this certain level, on a higher level, where we're clear, we're in our hearts, we are very vigilant about how we're executing our ideals as a society, we'd never be in this situation, right? So that stands to that we wouldn't be matching it, right? It stands to reason that that's what we have to gain from this situation, to learn those things, to learn that way of being and interacting as a society. That's our great lesson. So it's not, woe is me, there's all of this injustice, this, they're calling this thing something that it's not. They're making it they're using it to oppress people and to wreck the economy and all of that stuff. But this is an opportunity for us to take our society to the next level, internally and externally. That's how I see it, at least.
That's profound. And so basically, in summary, you're saying change the world, start with yourself, and then let that radiate, from the inside out. The more of us that do that,
I love
the more we can feel that change collectively. That's powerful advice, Junod. And I know in your article towards the end, you talk about again the silver linings and treatment and alternatives. And in a separate discussion, I'd love to invite and will invite your wife Lita to talk about how that can be approached from a medicinal standpoint and from her practices, point of view, but I know you're part of that practice as well, and then you bring the hypnotherapy to the table. So can you give us a little glimpse on how that works? I mean, people hear about hypnosis and hypnotists, and it seems like, I mean, almost like beyond an alternative therapy, like
Yeah,
something that most people might question, like, how does that even work? But obviously, science has shown how deep the power of the subconscious is. So can you give us a bit of a summary on how your practice and treatment and just hypnosis, hypnotherapy works?
sure, sure. So hypnotists are very, very varied in their approach. And I've learned from some of the best hypnotists on the planet, I feel, some of my teachers. Uh, and we're encouraged to form our own definition of how we work. And for me, the definition of hypnosis is the successful communication with the subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind is it's the stage for all change. So it's the part of us that is silently executing all of our internal conditioning, everything that we've received from our parents, from our schoolmates, from TV, society, things that our bosses, things that we've done, our deepest fears. All of those things live subconsciously in a place where they're operating, and we don't know exactly what they're doing. Yet it makes such an impact in our lives. Our decisions that we think we do for a specific reason, it may be because there's a subconscious impulse that originated when we were like 10, right? That we were hurt, or there's some type of trauma there. So the way that I work in hypnosis, clinical hypnosis with someone, is we communicate with the subconscious by going to a deep level of relaxation, right? And working out. It's almost like we're having a conversation underwater. Underwater meaning in that deep level where the subconscious is open and listening and present. And what we find is that there are issues that can instantly be transformed just by going to a different level of an altered state. So, for example, I had a client who he had issues with his family, his parents, since he was a kid. He just felt different from them, and he just couldn't relate to them. He ended up making a whole lot of money. They didn't make like a lot of money, and that furthered the gap. And in one session, we were able to communicate with him that love doesn't need similarity, right? That he could extend love to his family without being exactly like them. And from that day on, he, I don't know exactly how it happened. It happened in the depth of his internal world, but something clicked. And from that day on, he was very different towards his family, and he had a fantastic relationship with them, where he was able to go there, feel good about being there, and then leave, and then have have a little space, because he still needed that space. But
Sure.
it's these amazing kind of changes that happen for people, happen beyond what could happen with, let's say, reading a book or talking out your problem, or just visiting it on a surface level. If you go deeper, you'll get deeper results.
That sounds unbelievable. And as I pulled up, you were speaking your website, coachingtheinside.com. It's a nice, catchy brand name as well. So, for anyone listening, can learn more or connect with Junod through that website, coachingtheinside.com. I appreciate that summary of what you do and that anecdote. And I think it relates well, as you said before, to the big picture of what's happening in the world right now and what's always happened in the mass world in terms of media hypnosis and other forms of penetration of the subconscious, maybe not with the best intentions, but really proving that that's able to happen, both with positive intentions of healing some of those wounds, and also with some negative intentions, which is what we have to try to make that connection and build that relationship for with our subconscious mind, so that we can be the nurturer of that, of how that's programmed, essentially.
Mm-hmm. And what I find is really important. I'm not sure if that began with a question. Was that a question?
Not necessarily, just really making the connection between what you do with your clients, individually, and how that's connects to programming and that can happen on a collective level.
Yeah.
Or it's still individual, but it comes from an external source that has a different agenda, as opposed to us being trained to take that connection over, take responsibility for it ourselves.
That's a really great point, because that's more of as above, so below, right? What are we, the collective of human beings on this planet, or in this country? We are a group of cells of a body, aren't we? We compose a huge unity, and that unity is a human unity, but it's just built of more people. So the same rules in many ways apply. The United States has traumas. The United States has issues and problems that it needs to get over. The United States has, as a country, has weaknesses and things that it has to work on. And this coronavirus, this whole issue is showing us a lot of our problems, a lot of our partisanship, the lack of harmony, and as well as what you were saying, our susceptibility to manipulation by our media, which it just shows there's a kind of mental laziness where we will take it because the nighttime news anchorman said it, instead of looking deeper and seeing if it really makes sense, and using our intuition, using our discernment. So, and another thing that I wanted to point out, as far as the fear goes, one thing that I really was happy that I did, I was thinking whether or not to do it when I was writing the article, was I included some accounts of physicians who really are treating coronavirus. They're treating COVID-19 in a way that is so much more successful than the media hints that we can. I mean, there are doctors out there that are treating this in an amazing way. And if the media were to focus on their efforts and their results that they're getting, the amount of fear would just tank. So, whether or not you read the article and take a look at it, I really encourage everyone to find people like who are doing this type of work. There's a guy named Richard Cheng. And he started in Wuhan, China. He talks about vitamin C, using intravenous vitamin C. There is Vladimir Zelenko, who is here in New York. He's doing a lot of work with hydrochloroquine and zinc. And there are a number of others, that some more that I include in the article. Lots of information, but to me, that's one of the most important sections in the whole article. I would just focus on that and look at all those sources and see that you don't have to have the same mortality rate that they're talking about in the news and that they're experiencing in hospitals. This is very different when treated a certain way.
I appreciate that. No, I appreciate that. Yeah, continue.
Oh, and also, Alita's going to kill me, but I forgot to mention her. She's counseling so many people and turning so many people who have COVID and helping them turn things around by giving them the right supplements, by giving them herbs, Chinese herbs, and acupuncture. And so there are a whole lot of people treating this thing in a way that is very, very encouraging, and that should, boy, if I said in an article, if these people used, took their model and went around the U.S. and taught everybody, and went to hospitals and taught them how to use this, we would have a completely different idea of this problem.
I personally agree with you, and I know that I've caught some flack for stating such heretical opinions, but no, I don't take it lightly. I mean, these are health matters. These are societal matters. There's a lot of very important decisions to be made at so many levels, and then each of us at an individual level has a chance to take all that in and still make a whole number of choices.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you, I mean, just point blank, based on what you're saying, in the article and here today, and obviously different countries and cities and states all have different types of decision making happening. Are you, if someone was coming to you to put you on a council to make a decision today for, let's say, New York or the US, would you be opening things up right away?
Oh, absolutely. I would open it back up immediately, and I'd bring life back to the way that it would be, and I would follow the counsel of a lot of the greatest scientists and epidemiologists and virologists who are out there saying, guys, this is yes, a deadly disease, but this is not more deadly than other diseases that have come recently in the past 20 years. And we are doing much more harm to society by closing things down and by separating human beings, by not allowing people to hug each other, and not allowing people to go to work and feed their kids than we're doing by keeping them at home, saying that we're keeping them safe. That's my conclusion after all of the work, all of the research, all of the reading that I've done.
Sure. No, I'm with you on that. I am, and others, are as well. Some of the ones that you cited here, and not just from a feeling point of view, but from a very scientific methodology that they've taken to see how to treat not just the disease when it takes people on, but how to really take a more preventative approach. And you talk, towards the end of the article about prevention and also herd immunity, which is obviously a concept that's been around for ages, that has proven successful.
Yeah.
So I'm on board, with you. Continue.
And I want to, so this also takes, I'm glad you brought up herd immunity, because it's so important to understand that the most distinguished epidemiologists are saying that that's the only way we're going to get through this, for it to become common in society. And that's what we're slowing down and we're stopping right now by keeping everybody at home. But in addition to that, on the freedom note, there's a thing called contact tracing. I don't know if you know about it, that they are proposing, and there's a bill right now in Congress, HR 6666, proposing to fund an effort to launch a program of tracing, technologically tracing everyone who a positive COVID test. A person who's had a positive COVID test has come into contact with. And
Right.
that is such an invasion of privacy. Now, the bill itself, if you read through the bill, and I have, it doesn't outline the specific invasions of privacy. But if you listen to the local politicians, and if you see how this same thing has been implemented as guided by the WHO in other countries, you'll see that it's extremely invasive, and it's probably unconstitutional to have people, they go as far as say things like they will come into people's home and extract a COVID positive person so that they don't infect the rest of their family. And as you can imagine, that has a whole lot of problems.
Sure.
And the truth is, when it comes to things like that, sometimes people get really scared. Oh my God, they're coming to our house. But the honest truth of that is, if even a relatively small percentage of the populace disagrees with that, it cannot happen. It can't happen. There's just too many people. So it becomes, again, a question of consciousness, right? So by raising the level of consciousness on the basis of, as a whole, right, as a body, we protect ourselves from bad choices and decisions. That's all it is.
Yeah. Oh, that's powerful stuff, Junod. And one thing that's interesting that I've seen, and I'm sure you have as well, is a lot of people that have come forward, like some of these doctors and speaking in terms of alternative approaches, have been, renounced, so vigorously. You'll see the backlash that comes up against them, or their videos even taken down, and this kind of censorship that's happening, which you wouldn't imagine in a country like the States, but we're seeing, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or who knows what's next. Amazon will start, blocking certain books or just taking them down. And to me, that's very concerning, because when people are trying to get independent, objective, not even objective is not the word, it could even be positional, resource that has its own position, but everyone has an angle, right? And so, we have to be free to do our own research. And as you said earlier, come to our own conclusions. But when we're only allowed to look at, what quote unquote they want us to see, it gets a little dangerous, quite dangerous.
Yeah, you can't PG-13 the American people. You cannot put your hands over their ears and say, this is not appropriate for you guys to hear this. All of these conversations need to happen. The plandemic conversation needs to happen. The David Icke conversation needs to happen. Whether true or false, people can come to their own conclusions about things. And so, and I name them because they're both videos and sources that have been removed from YouTube and Facebook very aggressively. And the people need to be able to have these conversations, discuss them in all consciousness, and then find out what rings true for them. So, and it's terrible to censor in that way, unless you're talking about a 3-year-old kid or a 5-year-old kid.
Right.
You can't censor grown adults, especially not in a democracy.
Well, I guess in that sense, I hope this conversation and video is able to get out and touch some people. And if we get censored in some way, maybe that means we're speaking a certain level of truth that some people would not like to get out there. But let's hope that doesn't happen. And
well,
I would like
too controversial, except for consciousness. That's pretty controversial.
Yeah, exactly. To some, it might be a threat to certain powers that be. So on that note, I want to invite you, Junod. This has been extremely insightful. It's been great to hear from you, and I'd love to continue talking to you as things unfold. But I'd like to invite you right now, as we do with the Polymath Project, to offer some type of challenge to our listeners, to our community, something they can take and do and start for themselves at any time.
Well, I have had such an amazing experience during this COVID-19 lockdown, right? Because I've applied myself like in an internal space to work on my internal practice, get to know myself a little bit more, do my own routines in a way that is like really disciplined and that I can get so much out of it. Because if you think of the rat race, that wasn't leaps and bounds better either, right? Because the rat race, it gets you stressed and there's all of these demands coming at you a million ways. There's a beauty in everything, and there's a beauty in being in your house because you can really experience yourself in a new way. You can meditate, you can do exercises and go deeper. And I always recommend to like all my clients, use this time, find something you love, hone a skill, connect with people that you love, develop yourself. And so if I'm going to suggest something, I would suggest there's a very simple set of exercises at the Institute for Hermetic Philosophy. We call it the Higher Consciousness Challenge. It's a PDF outlining these exercises. It's how you can raise your level of consciousness for one day by doing some very, very simple common sense exercises. And my challenge would be during this period to go there and download that. Go to growyourbeing.com, download the Higher Consciousness Challenge. I see you have it up on the page. Read through it and then do it for 21 days straight. And I will be doing it. I'll do it with you. We'll send out emails. We'll talk about our progress. We'll have a place where you can, talk about your progress and ask questions. And it'll be great. We'll do it together and raise our level of consciousness. Because just like we were saying, the one problem that the world has is a low level of consciousness. And by increasing our awareness, then we'll be serving ourselves and we'll be serving the world.
Amen. Amen. So there's a PDF. Put the email address in on the website, growyourbeing.com, and one will automatically receive that PDF that outlines how to take on this challenge.